So I love me some Double Dragon. I've been playing it ever since the original arcade was released, and I have been a fan ever since. So when I came across the Double Dragon 2 Game Boy game a few years ago, I immediately picked it up and I went to a friend's house afterwards to play it. And when we popped it in, my friend, who is a Kunio-kun fan, recognized the similarities between Double Dragon 2 and Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen, which was only released in Japan on the Game Boy. So when I stumbled across the game while I was game hunting last year with some friends, it was only $5 and I snagged it immediately. I was like, I have to have this game. So, you know what I like to do? I like to compare games. I like to see the differences between them. So this one should be pretty good. Let's roll it.
Double Dragon 2 was released for the Game Boy in 1991 and continued Billy and Jimmy Lee's brawling adventures against a typical antisocial gang of thugs. This version, however, has no relation to Double Dragon 2 The Revenge or its sequel Double Dragon 3, despite sharing the same cover art as its NES iteration. And the reason for this is simple: it was never a Double Dragon game to begin with. The Game Boy's Double Dragon 2 was intended to be called The Renegades, a sequel to Technos' Renegade. As many of you probably already know, Renegade is the westernized version of Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun, a game that spawned many sequels in Japan, including 1990's Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen, which translates into Tough Guy Kunio, The Further Brawls. Bangai Ranto Hen is actually the direct sequel to Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun and adopts the graphical style of downtown Nekketsu Monogatari, otherwise known as River City Ransom in the States. So, seeing as this game is a direct sequel to what us North Americans know as Renegade, it makes perfect sense that the Renegades would be the westernized version of Bangai Ranto Hen. But Double Dragon 2's American publisher Acclaim had different plans, retooling the handheld beat-em-up to resemble a Billy and Jimmy Lee brawler. When firing the two up, both have a similar credit screen, with each of the game's respective logos adorned at the top before launching into their title screens, each with its own distinctive visuals and music. In fact, the soundtracks for both games are completely different, with Bangai Ranto Hen's score penned by Satoshi Urakawa and Double Dragon 2's by Kazuo Sawa. Pressing start yields similar results, allowing you to choose either a one-player game, the option for one player to continue, and the same for a friend. Since I'm playing both of these games on a Retron 5, there wasn't any way for me to capture any two-player footage. You also have the choice between 3 difficulty settings, just like in Renegade / Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun, although selecting easy only allows you to play through the first stage. Once your desired options are selected, both games launch into an opening cutscene. Double Dragon 2 uses text and rudimentary English, along with a couple of visuals, to tell the tale of Billy and Jimmy Lee joining a dojo named Scorpions. In only a short time, Billy and Jimmy were promoted to teachers by the Scorpions' boss, Gordon. This enraged one of the dojo students named Anderson. Anderson then shoots and kills a man named Wright and frames Billy for the crime. Gordon then dispatches Anderson to bring Billy back to him and employs the entire gang of Scorpions for the task. This was the same plot intended for the Renegades, minus Billy and Jimmy Lee. Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen also tells its tale with text, with one more visual than its English counterpart. Kunio's friend Hiroshi is once again the victim, this time suffering a beating at the hands of Yuji Munakata, son of the chairman of Munakata Industries, after attempting to thwart Yuji from kidnapping Hiroshi's crush, Mihoko. Enraged, Kunio employs the help of his once rival, now ally Ricky, to join him in avenging Hiroshi, but not before having to face off against Yuji's gang of hoodlums. Stage 1 then begins outside of Nekketsu High School, where Kunio and Hiroshi practice their studies. You're immediately confronted by 2 of Yuji's henchmen, followed by a third. In Double Dragon 2, you begin outside on a New York street, and at first glance doesn't seem to resemble its Japanese counterpart by much. Like in Bangai Ranto Hen, you're attacked by a couple of thugs, followed by a third, but the sprites are very different from each other, with the Japanese game resembling what had already been established in its region as the archetype for the Kunio-kun series. The sprites in Double Dragon 2, on the other hand, resemble, well, sprites from the Double Dragon series. Funny thing is, the bad guys' sprites are unchanged from the Renegades, only Billy and Jimmy Lee were altered a bit to resemble their respective models. Renegades wasn't too difficult to convert into a Double Dragon game. The HUD is pretty much the same, save for the avatars of Kunio and Ricky being replaced with a 1 and 2P respectively. While you stroll down the city street, pummeling baddies along the way, the aesthetics for both cultures are vastly different. Still, you encounter similar thugs along the way, like these stick-wielding punks. Too bad they never dropped their weapons for you to use, which is the case for every bad dude that wields some sort of object to take down our protagonists in each game. In both, you encounter a door that opens up where more subservient cronies come out. And while this similarity may give off the impression that the enemy placements are identical in both Double Dragon 2 and Bangai Ranto Hen, that's not the case, as there are minute differences in where and when some enemies will appear. The number of toughs that you face off against in each stage, however, are exactly the same. Another big difference is the stage music that accompanies the fisticuffs in both games. Here's the Stage 1 theme for Double Dragon 2. And Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen. I feel that both songs represent each franchise splendidly. And speaking of music, both of these beat-em-ups have a really bumpin' boss track. But before we take a listen, let's first check out the initial boss for each game. Double Dragon 2 pits you up against a lanky boxer whose look and movements resemble an Australian marsupial. Surely that means that in Bangai Ranto Hen, they'll...
Probably gonna make me box a kangaroo.
Nope. Just a different looking boxer. Bummer. Anyway, let's take a listen to each boss theme. Once the bosses are defeated, both Kunio and Billy head downstairs to the subway, where we're greeted with a different end of stage fanfare.
Double Dragon, the greatest martial arts video game legend ever. Kick it off with the million-seller, Double Dragon 2 for your NES. And now, the incredible Double Dragon 2 Legend comes to Game Boy. The most outrageous portable street fighting action ever. And for world-class martial arts action, it's got to be Double Dragon 3. Total Double Dragon action for NES and Game Boy. From Acclaim, choose your weapon.
Stage 2 begins in the subway for both games, with the backgrounds looking near identical to each other. But are they really that close? It's like a Highlights magazine Can You Spot the Differences puzzle. Can you identify them all? Let's see how you did. The map on the wall is the same except for the text. Both have a sign to the right of the map that differ from each other. The wall itself is made up of different sized bricks, while the wall in Bangai Ranto Hen has concrete trim at the bottom, and Double Dragon 2 has some kind of shelf or railing with grating on the floor. So let's talk about the combat, which is exactly the same in both games. Both Billy and Kunio have punches and kicks at their disposal, but also a few other moves. There's the collar grab, which is a Renegade / Kunio-kun staple. Once you toss your foe onto his back on the street, you can then perform my favorite move in the game, the stomp. It is immensely satisfying to leave footprints on the chest of a downed opponent, and I wish that more beat-em-ups would have adopted this maneuver, like the Combat Tribes did. There's also a jumping uppercut that takes some getting used to landing. The hit detection with this punch is tricky, but nailing a dude in the face with it is pretty awesome. Surprisingly, there are no jump kicks in either game. Weird. Okay, so back to the Stage 2 differences. This column here has some sort of box attached to it in the Japanese version, while the North American one does not. The subway doors have a grittier look to them in Double Dragon 2 and sport graffiti on the outside of the cars and trims of bolts. The windows also have a slightly different look between the two. The stage concludes against a knife-wielding goon in both, albeit with different sprites. This will be an ideal time to listen to the different Stage 2 themes for each game. The third stage brings us inside of the train cars, where we're met with opposition in both games. Again, Double Dragon 2 has the grittier look, with graffiti on the seats and walls, overlooked by broken windows. In contrast, other than a scuff on the floor, the train car looks much cleaner in Kunio's game. This is a pretty accurate representation of both cultures. If you've ever been outside of the United States, you know what I mean. There are even little straps hanging for riders to hold onto in the Japanese version. Nice touch. The windows on the doors are different, and there are a couple of extra windows next to them in Bangai Ranto Hen. Other than the different enemy sprites, these are the only differences in this short stage. So let's hear the tunes. Stage 4 in both has our protagonists duking it out on a subway platform. The outside of the train cars share the same differences as in Stage 2. Near the exit of the subway is where we'll spot some other discrepancies. Once again, Double Dragon 2 has the grating on the floor, but also has 3 narrowly spaced columns on the wall versus Bangai Ranto Hen's more spacious 2. A map adorns these spaces in both, but in slightly different locations. These vents are also askew in relation to each other. There's also some kind of sign on the left side in the North American game, while the Japanese one has a ticket purchasing window on the right. And of course the music. The stage concludes with a gun-toting lowlife in both games, before exiting the subway through slightly different looking turnstiles. Now that's an odd change. This winds up the first of 3 sections for both games, which are made up of a total of 10 stages. 4 down, 6 to go. Each is represented by a dot on 2 very similar, yet different looking maps. The little walking avatar is the same though. Double Dragon 2's map indicates that a bridge is up next, so let's head over that way. On the bridge, Billy Lee is surrounded by scorpions with the New York skyline in the background, while Kunio throws hands with Yuji's henchmen in front of a pachinko parlor. Wonder if there are any good Konami titles in there. And of course, both games offer their own respective stage tunes, so let's check them out. the bridge, Billy makes his way through a construction site, while Kunio fights his way down a well-lit gambler's haven. Further down, he comes across a chain-link gate that opens up to reveal motorcycles and cars. I take this to be a salvage yard. This is where Stage 5's end boss makes his appearance, wielding a sword. Billy's foe? A hockey-masked chainsaw-wielding psychopath who appears from an open garage door. Remember that time Jason Voorhees mowed people down with a chainsaw? Yeah, me neither. This is the first occurrence where we'll see two bosses at the end of the same stage with drastically different aesthetics, but their attack patterns are identical, although Jason's chainsaw naturally has to emit an annoying buzz that only makes you want to send him back to his mother ASAP. Once both cronies are dispatched of, Billy and Kunio head downstairs to ride another subway. Stage 6 places you inside of another subway station, so this level in both Double Dragon 2 and Bangai Ranto Hen are identical to the second stage. Same thing with the 7th level, riding in a subway car. That means, yup, you guessed it, Stage 8 is outside on the subway platform on the way back to the surface. There is one difference in here though, the boss. Billy Lee finds himself going up against a ninja who can teleport and make multiple ghosts of himself, while Kunio's subway station houses a really fucking weird looking wrestler thing. Just what the hell am I looking at here? And why do I get the feeling that this dude is oiled up? This is the only instance in the entirety of both games where an end level boss doesn't share the exact same fighting pattern. Neither the ninja nor the wrestler are very difficult to take down. The map in both games then show that there are only 2 more levels to conquer. Very nice. Back on the streets of Stage 9, Billy and Kunio both pummel baddies on their way to each of their respective arch-enemies' hideouts. Like in earlier stages, enemies will come out of doors despite the 2 different backgrounds of each game. Double Dragon 2's level ends outside of the Scorpion's headquarters with their name and logo right over the door. This is akin to looking for Vito Corleone at the Genco Olive Oil Company. Hey, at least we know we're at the right place. Bangai Ranto Hen Stage 9 ends outside of Munakata Industries, also with a sign over their front doors. Thank goodness for blatant advertising, eh? This is where the battle with the boss takes place. Kunio takes on a sumo wrestler, while Billy just fights some fat guy. Both will do some crazy damage if they jump onto Kunio and Billy, so watch out for that big ass. Once these heavy-set fellows are cast aside like a used rubber, it's into the Scorpions and Munakata's hideouts respectively.
Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen Game Boy で登場
Technos!
The final stage in both games are pretty much identical, save for a few small changes here and there. The shading on the floor is slightly different. The elevator rides are the same, with each game sharing the same baddies from their respective counterparts. The second floor in Double Dragon 2 has pictures on the wall of Anderson, the guy who framed Billy, which is kinda strange seeing as the Scorpion's boss is Gordon, but whatever, it's a video game. The pictures on the wall in the Munakata building? Pretty flowers in a vase.
Lovely. La 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 lovely.
This stage's music is also lovely, so let's take a listen. The third floor is a boss rush in both games where you'll have to throw down with the end level foes from previous stages, all in the same order for Double Dragon 2 and Bangai Ranto Hen. A ride on an elevator takes you up to the top floor, where a cutscene will trigger for both brawlers. Billy confronts Gordon, sporting a mullet that is believed to be a holdover from the main protagonist of the Renegades. He explains that he didn't kill Wright, and that someone is trying to nail him. When Gordon asks who that could be, Anderson flies in and takes out the Scorpion's boss. The cutscene in Kunio's game has him face to face with Yuji Munakata. He asks Kunio if he wants to fight him. "You beat up Hiroshi," Kunio replies. With a smirk, Yuji says, "Well, he interrupted our fun." Aw shit, now it's on. There are actually quite a few differences on the top floor where the final battle commences. Kunio's fight has power outlets in the wall, while Billy's does not. The skyline seen through the windows are different in both games, as is the trim around the panes of glass. So is the furniture. And the rugs. The one in Bangai Ranto Hen is in the middle of the room under a table, while the rug in Double Dragon 2 is at the bottom, emblazoned with the Scorpion's logo. Let's listen to the final boss theme for each game as we watch Anderson and Yuji get their asses handed to them. Once Billy takes care of Anderson, he runs over to a dying Gordon, who laments in not believing Billy. When Kunio takes out Yuji Munakata, he and Ricky visit Hiroshi in the hospital. The credits then roll, so let's hear the ending themes for Double Dragon 2 and Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen.
So there you go. Those are the differences between Double Dragon 2 and Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen. You know, off the top of my head, I can't think of another game that changed up the graphics, the music, and the plot, but kept the exact same gameplay mechanics. So I don't know if you guys can think of one. Let me know in the comments below, because like I said, off the top of my head, nothing comes to mind. Alright, so I gotta do some shout outs and some thanks, because without the help from some people, this video would not have been possible. So first off, I want to thank Gajillionaire, the host of GTV. He helped me with some translations, so I appreciate that a lot. Now, if you haven't seen this dude's channel yet, he lives in Japan, he has a lot of Japanese knowledge, and his videos are well edited, well narrated, they are just great. So I'm going to leave his link in the description below. Make sure to check out his channel. And the next shout out that I want to give to is the people who run the Kunio-kun and Double Dragon fandom wiki pages. That was a big help. It was a great resource. And I want to thank the same guys who run the Double Dragon Discord server. You guys helped me out tremendously. I really appreciate it. Like I said, without your help, this video would not have been possible. And of course, I want to thank you, the viewer, for watching this video, for sticking through it. Put a lot of work into it, did a lot of research. It was a lot of fun putting together, so I really appreciate it. And until next time, I will catch you guys later.